What will your future look like? The job you do today could be different than the jobs of tomorrow. Some see this as a challenge. At UCF, we see opportunity. A chance for you to grow your knowledge and strengthen your skills from anywhere life might take you. With in-demand degree programs and resources for your success, UCF Online can help you prepare for the future and all the possibilities that come with it.
From the University of Central Florida Center for Distributed Learning, I am Tom Cavanaugh.
And I am Kelvin Thompson.
And you are listening to Topcast, the teaching online podcast. Hello, Kelvin. Yeah,
that's a non-mystery woo.
You're the mystery woo today.
It's not a mystery. Well, it's a mystery that I'm still here. And might I say again this year, Tom, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Dr. Thompson. We are turning the page into 2021, which I think it's probably a bit of a cliche at this point, but we're all hoping it's better than 2020.
Aren't we though? I'm still haunted from that Topcast and Friends holiday special, the retrospective of we were so happy at the beginning of 2020.
Look at these poor naive rubes just strolling gleefully right towards the edge of the cliff that everybody else can see that we can't see.
That's right. So I'm jaded this new year. I'm cautiously we'll see.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I said stuff
better.
I remember saying at one point that I think we were still talking about it being in Wuhan.
Yes.
And I think it was our colleague Bai Wen's family.
Yes.
And I was asking her about how it was going for them, and they were all locked up and in quarantine, and we were all in shock about that. And it's like, wow,
yeah,
well, this probably
little do you know.
Well, it won't be resolved by the time this airs, right? In a couple of weeks. Can you imagine? It's going to go on for another 2 weeks. Yeah. Lo and behold, here we are, January 2021.
Yeah, what does that make it? Probably 40-something weeks. If you're going to count in weeks. I stopped counting in weeks a long time ago.
Yeah, it's like a baby. How many weeks old is our lockdown?
Yeah, too many.
It's definitely a terrible toddler of sorts at this point.
Yes, that's right.
All right. I heard you slurping. I heard a little slurp, a dulcet gurgle of sorts.
Ooh, a dulcet gurgle of sorts. Yes, indeed. Hope you all, bought your holiday album from back at the Topcast and Friends holiday special.
Yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed that. That was a bit of a departure for us.
That's right. They do call it holiday special.
Yeah.
It's a special, not an
We did have a
everyday.
little palate cleanser with our interview with Luke in between that and this.
That's true. That's right. Yeah. So you're wondering what it is you're drinking?
I am wondering what it is I am drinking. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, this, Tom, is a blend called Foundation from Reanimator Coffee Roasters in Philadelphia, PA. The roasters say that they've carefully constructed this blend to be a good everyday coffee. It was the first blend that the roasters made, so that was their foundation, hence the name. It's kind of interesting as a blend because I'm intrigued by this. It's somewhat seasonal. While about 60% of the coffee is always sourced from Brazil, and they say they always add a bit of Ethiopia in there, the remainder is made up of different coffees at different times of the year. So I thought this would be a good choice for today's episode because we're dealing with some fundamental or foundational principles that can guide us in our ever-changing times. So how's the coffee and how's the connection to today's episode?
Coffee's good. I like it. You do make a strong cup of coffee, Kelvin Thompson, but that's okay. I like it. It'll perk me up for the rest of the afternoon. I'll get all my emails done extra fast. No, it's good. I like it. It's funny for somebody who claims to not be a blend, coffee blend fan. You've been bringing quite a few lately to the Topcast.
Yeah, I haven't counted more than I used to. I think that I hope, still predominate with single origins. But yes, a few high quality blends have crossed my path. During the last year, and so I've brought them in, as an opportunity for connection and so forth, and some of them are pretty good.
This one's pretty high quality. I like it, and as far as the connection goes, you sort of laid it out for me there, so I don't really have to guess. And I think it's fine. It's fine connection.
It's fine. It's all right.
It's
all right. No other comment. We'll just as we get into the episode, people figure it out for themselves. It'll be all right.
No, I think it's good. Yeah, because you as you said, we're going to be talking about kind of foundational principles and how that should guide some of the work that we do and the decisions that we make. And that's how you describe the coffee. Foundational.
Yep. Foundation blend. So not bad, huh?
Not bad at all. So we are in a new year, right?
Happy New Year.
And it's probably worth noting that as of at least this recording, the COVID-19 global pandemic is still underway. So we are recording this in full disclosure prior to January 1st. But not that much prior. No. So I think that we can safely predict that by the time you are listening to this, not much has changed.
No, probably not.
So although the COVID pandemic, we're still dealing with it on a daily basis as institutions. We've decided not to label these necessarily as field reports anymore. We're kind of stepping away from that field report label, even though I think we both anticipate continuing to address different aspects of remote teaching or other COVID responses related to digital teaching and learning during these first of the month episodes. And we'll continue with our practice of having guest interviews on our third Monday episodes. And I guess to state the obvious, right? One positive holdover from 2020.
Oh, I want to hear a positive thing about 2020, Tom. Give it to us.
Is we've decided to continue with our twice monthly schedule release. That was an experiment, and at least for now, it is experiment no more. It's become sort of instantiated as part of Topcast practice, I should say.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. So noted. So specifically, as you said, foundational principles. In this episode, we're going to give some thoughtful consideration to how specific technologies can help or hinder various aspects of the teaching and learning process. This is particularly important in times of change when new technology platforms spring up quickly. And I'm going to just offer up one of my Kelvinisms, right? One of Kelvin's general principles, and you can pick it apart or debate it, whatever. But then the episode's going to go a whole different direction if you do too much of that. But that principle that I found to be useful is this: we should make it easy to do the right thing. We should make it easy for faculty, for students, for whomever. We should make it easy for them to do the right thing. So in this case, make it easy for faculty to do the right thing through our technology adoption. Make it easy for students to do the right thing. So one way of examining critically the tools available to us as online learning leaders is to consider what right thing those tools enable or prevent. So part of our job is to identify and promote right things from both, I would say, a strategic and a moral perspective. One, I'm curious what you think about that principle, and two, maybe we could talk about some use cases.
Yeah, I think it's good. And I've never articulated it like that before, but I certainly agree with it and have tried to live it. And I think it's both the tool selection and the process around the use of that tool.
Yep.
You don't want to set barriers to doing the right thing inadvertently, but you don't want to make things so loose that it becomes kind of a Wild West where you don't have controls to encourage the right thing to be done. We're talking kind of abstractly about it, which maybe makes it a little harder to conceptualize what we're talking about. Maybe we should zero in on a couple of examples that might concretize this concept of yours.
Well, one that kind of is what put us on this path for this episode was you had brought up kind of a revisiting of online proctoring, given its prevalence during the COVID response era. So how does online proctoring play into this?
Yeah, that's one that I've been spending probably more time than I would have liked dealing with, both licensing, negotiating with vendors, and going through the purchasing and legal process, as well as getting faculty trained and dealing with student complaints and all of the other things around online proctoring, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, it's not me personally always doing all those things, but a lot of times it comes through me that I have to be traffic cop to dole out to the right people to respond to. So it's one I've been giving a lot of thought to lately. And I think all of us recognize the role that online proctoring plays, the important role it can play. But I think all of us in a utopian vision of the world would like to see a world where we didn't need it, right? Where we didn't have it at all. So how can we have this tool, but encourage its responsible use? Not, like, for example, not have it serve in place of more authentic kinds of assessments. You still want to have the authentic kinds of assessments. And in some cases, you would prefer that, right? Instead of having proctoring. But proctoring is a means to an end, I think, to get us towards those kinds of assessments when the time comes. There are ways to set up the proctoring systems so that they can be configured, like how you set the dials and switches in the settings to enable or not enable certain kinds of behaviors, whether that's using AI or live proctoring versus not live proctoring, IP address checking, other kinds of things that that you can set up or not set up depending upon how it's used.
So from the standpoint of this principle, what right thing does online proctoring enable, or what right thing does online proctoring prevent? Like, I think one right thing is, it seems like there are, at least during the pandemic response, there are disciplines, faculty and disciplines who previously resisted online teaching because of their more traditional assessments and their concerns over, say, academic misconduct and kind of high-stakes testing. Online proctoring is something that makes it a little bit more, greases the skids. It makes it a little bit more palatable for them to engage in, whether we call it remote or online. So that's, in that sense, online proctoring enables the right thing of actually engaging in online teaching and learning, which I think we would agree is the right thing, I hope. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's been an interesting kind of silver lining to this whole remote teaching cloud that we've all had to sort of face. That there have been positives that have come out. One being that departments, disciplines that we haven't traditionally engaged with because they've been primarily face-to-face or resistant to online learning, have been forced to confront that. And one of the big objections that they've had has been the ability to ensure academic integrity and the kinds of tests that they give. And I think they've seen now, through the use of these technological platforms, that they can assess how they want. Now, you and I might argue that there might be better ways of assessing, but at least right now, how they want to assess, which is closed book exam, as if they were in a classroom somewhere, they can do it. And I would say from a macro perspective, do the right thing from a student's point of view is to ensure that academic integrity is being encouraged and rewarding the honest students by making sure that the dishonest students are not able to kind of get away with cheating. It values the degree a lot more if we can guarantee, as much as we are able to, the integrity of the assessment, the exam, and the ultimate final grade.
Yeah. I agree with you, though. I think you said something along these lines at the beginning. We started talking about this, that online proctoring itself doesn't necessarily go far enough to help faculty transition to deeper, or we might say more authentic forms of learning assessment. And I think maybe before we've talked about more, if there is such a thing, more cheat-proof assessments. Like the more authentic and deeper you are, the less prone to kind of replicative cheating there is, right? I thought I might plug a couple things. We did talk about academic integrity online some time ago, back in episode 33. Can you remember that far back? Academic integrity online, addressing criticisms. And we talked a good bit about assessment types, the role of proctoring, academic integrity, and so forth. And there's some other good podcast episodes we'll put in the show notes. One is a recent one from our colleague Bonnie Stachowiak over at Teaching in Higher Ed. She interviewed Deandra Little in an episode called Authentic Assignments, and our colleagues from SUNY Oswego on the T for Teaching podcast a couple of years ago now had an episode titled Assessment, where they interviewed David Eubanks, who I think is still at Wake Forest. And those are some good backgrounder, substantive ideas on assessment. They do go a little bit deeper than is enabled by online proctoring.
I might say also from maybe not necessarily about assessment, but just platforms and decisions that encourage doing the right thing. The use of a single standard learning management system is probably one of those, again, at a macro level. I'm not sure how many schools there are out there anymore that just have a free-for-all. Every college can have their own LMS within a university. I think that's becoming more and more rare.
You still run across them sometimes, though, right?
You do. It's true. I hear about it every once in a while. And I also hear about different schools within maybe a system, like a university system or a college system, using different tools. But for the most part, having a single LMS encourages a certain level of consistency that allows you to support the faculty better, support the students better, so that they don't have to relearn how to use the platform every time they log into a new class. Talk about cognitive load. You want them learning the content, right? Not how to navigate every class that they're in.
That's exactly right. So I guess driving this particular use case home on online proctoring, we're going to have kind of an it depends conclusion, right? Neither rejecting online proctoring nor naively thinking that online proctoring is enough is a viable option for online higher education. It's more of an it depends, right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's nuanced. It really, it's so context specific that that there's no one size fits all, which is how some people like to frame proctoring. But
yes.
But if you're going to use it, to your principle, use it responsibly to encourage the right kinds of things that you want, the right values that you want for your institution.
We have a couple of other use cases in our notes here. Why don't you pick one? We probably have time for one. Why don't you take us down a rabbit trail?
All right. Let's. I don't know. How about a COVID-related one? Video. Synchronous video. So you and I are recording this on Zoom right now. And a lot of people have been teaching via Zoom and other tools like it who had never done it before. And how can we use these kinds of synchronous video platforms that have been thrust into the core critical path of all of our institutions in a way that encourages faculty and students to do the right thing, to engage as opposed to lecture, like through the use of the tools inherent in it, whether it's the whiteboard or polling or other kinds of tools that you can bring in or embed within an LMS or something like that. How can you have them do the right thing? And I think you had jotted some notes on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think two right things come to mind pretty quickly. One echoes our last use case, right? Synchronous video platforms arguably facilitate entree into, quote, online, unquote, for faculty and disciplines historically resistant to asynchronous approaches. I can't really do this in an asynchronous way. Okay, so here you go. And then related to that is, I think, there's a provision of immediacy, some real-time or near real-time communication. And you already hinted at this. We do sometimes equate that, or at least some people equate that with, quote, engagement, unquote. We could debate whether that's enough, but there has been that represents something. That real-time thing is a kind of a right thing that we're enabling, and it allows some people to participate who wouldn't have otherwise, disciplines, faculty, and therefore their students. It's been so important in this remote instruction era.
Yeah, and even remote meeting, right?
Right.
Good grief! If we didn't have tools like this,
We wouldn't be doing much.
No, we wouldn't have been able to have carried out the business of the university, let alone teach classes, which is the core business of the university. But just all the ancillary stuff to support that, all day long we're meeting, whether it's on Zoom or Teams or Skype or one of the million tools we have. It's just necessary, right? And so how can we encourage people to do the right thing? And so for me, the ability to see my colleagues, some of whom I haven't physically put eyes on since March of 2020, that's a long time to work with people and never see them. It's weird. So video has helped, although there are some colleagues that have not even turned their video on in all that time. Well, I see you now, and you come in the office sometimes, so I'm not putting you into that category.
I'm bandwidth poor on a lot of days.
Yeah. But I mean, they have their reasons, and I'm not criticizing that. It's just, I do think that there's something about there's a right thing about being able to look at your colleagues while you're having a conversation with them about it. There's a human element of it that video at least allows you to approximate.
Yeah, although in a teaching learning context, I mean, I guess this sort of parallels our online proctoring analysis a little bit from the standpoint of this right thing. In a teaching learning context, just connecting technologically in real time isn't enough. It doesn't go far enough, right? You're tired of hearing me say this from my K-12 days. Telling isn't teaching and listening isn't learning. Okay, fine. How many times are we going to hear faculty complain about students not turning on their webcams, or students, feeling put upon, and there's arguments to be made on both sides. And if you just wait for the technology to do its thing, I mean, back to your earlier comment when we started this episode, it's not just about the technology, it's also about processes, right? And practices, and that idea that I think some have espoused, I don't know who it sources back to first, but that idea of faculty inviting students in, not requiring, but inviting, and even saying, it means so much to me when I can see you, and I don't want to invade your privacy or whatever, but, be appropriate. Then you hear faculty talking, well, students in bed, and, and, put some clothes on, would you? And, all kinds of things. But, just humanizing that. You need those kind of processes and parameters to make it more engaging, not just video being on.
Yeah, and I think it's interdependent too, because as I think you and I have talked about, I don't remember if we talked about it on the podcast or not, but
we need to hit record video more often.
Yeah, we should just record our lives because it's so vastly interesting, right? Synchronous video isn't going anywhere. No. When this thing's all over, I think that's one of the remaining echoes of the pandemic, that synchronous video will be more ubiquitous than it was before. And so we better figure out how to use it well. Yeah. And right now, as much as I like Zoom, and I kind of like it, it just works most of the time, and it's very good at what it does. It's a meeting platform.
Yeah.
It's not a teaching platform.
Right.
And we've been using this sort of square peg in a round hole since March, and we've just been making it work by pushing real hard to get it in.
Yeah, right.
And that's okay for a while. But there are, and this is probably a future episode as things get a little more mature, but there are new products coming out that are optimized for the synchronous instructional space. And that'll be interesting because that will further encourage faculty and students to quote unquote do the right thing, how to create engagement, how to do different kinds of lessons, how to get people in groups working together, how do you assess. And like one of them I saw allows the student to turn on the video just for the faculty member. And not for the rest of the class. So the faculty member can at least check in and make sure that you're paying attention, whatever. But if the student has issues or is embarrassed about their circumstances or whatever the reason is that they have their video off, it doesn't have to be exposed to the rest of the class. And I thought that's an interesting idea.
So, I'm right there with you. I think both of those things are important, right? One, the emergence and codification of what we might call good practices in synchronous online teaching and learning. And then to what extent can emerging platforms make it easier to do those right things? I think both of those things are very, very important.
Yeah.
Well, the coffee's dwindling. The hourglass is almost empty. Shall I take a stab at kind of landing the plane?
Please do. You have the con, Dr. Thompson.
Well, I would say with new technology platforms emerging regularly, and especially in times of change like those we're still living through, we're getting new technologies popping up all the time. It's important that principles guide our adoption decisions, not just circumstance, but principles that are more timeless. And these principles, I would say, must center on how students and faculty are affected. There might be institutional or policy considerations as well, but they must center on how students and faculty are affected. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. So let's all try to do a little bit better every day and encourage our I'll paraphrase you, something you say all the time, and then we'll encourage all of our colleagues to do the same. So maybe you would indulge me in a post-holiday plug.
Plug away.
So, dear listener, would you please consider potentially sharing Topcast with your colleagues? You could maybe email them or text them a link, maybe buy some time on a skywriting plane over the beach or at the lake. And you could share an episode that you think they might value. Or you could even invite colleagues to listen to an episode and then discuss it together, like a mini version of a book discussion group. We have heard of people using Topcast in professional development groups, like a weekly kind of or a monthly kind of discussion group amongst colleagues. And I'm thrilled when I hear that kind of stuff. So
for sure.
If you like this and you think that others might like it, then please do share.
The more the merrier.
All right. So thank you for the coffee, Kelvin. It was delicious and foundational and for the conversation, as always. Until next time, for Topcast, I'm Tom.
I'm Kelvin.
See you.